really heavy on a lot of people's minds. And last night it kind of occurred to me that it doesn't really matter how hard we fall, it's how we get up. And today we're getting up and we're getting up together. And I just really wanted to thank on behalf of the college, the leaders, all of you that are here for coming together to kind of create this task force. Because I think with that task force, we're going to be able to really solve some problems and put together the best action plan that we could possibly put together for our community, for our workers, for our local people, for our counties, for our commerce, for all of that. So we really thank you. And I wanted to share also that the college is really committed to being a partner throughout this process, whether it's technology, whether it's space, whether it's our resources or services. We would like to be a part of helping move Wisconsin Rapids forward into a new day and hopefully save the legacy of the paper industry that we have here in our city and in our state. So with that, just a couple housekeeping things. We have some water. Restrooms are across the hall. If anything comes up, please seek me out. I'm going to be sitting over on the left side by the door. We have about 24 people or so on. 30 people right now that are on audio, and we have a number of folks on Teams you can see in front of you. So we have a vast group of people coming in with different virtual technologies. So we're going to kick this off, and I'm going to turn it over. Thank you. I think Representative, you're up.
Yeah, sure. So good morning, and thank you all again for taking time to be here and to be a part of this. When I first got the news from the CEO in Ohio, the first thing I did is I messaged my main guy, John, here, and I said, honestly, it's the worst day in Wisconsin Rapids history, period. I want that to sink in a little bit. I mean, the gravity of this moment shouldn't escape us. I mean, this is a mill that has survived everything since its inception. We're talking world wars, we're talking Great Depressions. I mean, that's a line I stole from Senator Teston this morning. I'm glad he brought it up because I can steal it now from him. But this shouldn't escape us of how important this task is and the things that have to be accomplished by this group here today. And whether it's economic development and trying to find a suitor to have a role, or whether it's we work with the administration on keeping Verso engaged and active as a principal owner and operator, or whether some things don't work out for us and we have to engage the second part of this task force where we're working on the employee side. It chokes me up to talk about it, but these are guys I graduated high school with, who have worked at the mill for 30 years, who are getting closer, and I'm not saying I'm old, but getting closer to the end of their careers and not knowing what opportunities exist for them. And I know we have a broader community, and I know we've got opportunities that have been developed here. The current mayor, Mr. Blazer, thank you for being here today. Doing great work with his team to keep developing opportunities in our community. I give a lot of credit to our previous mayor, Zach Berwink, for bringing some of those opportunities as well. We've got some things in our community that are great assets that we can use and build on. We've got the North American headquarters of Ocean Spray. We've got Metalco here. We've got ND Papers looking to make expansion of reality in Burin. We've got other players, Domtar, Nakusa, and I could go on in the manufacturers that we still have here. But again, the gravity of the moment is this is the one. North Central Workforce Development Board forwarded their assessment on the impact. A $700 million impact to Wood County alone. That's a tough pill to swallow. We've got partners here today on the phone and on video from other districts around the state of Wisconsin, and DNR being here as well. And Dan Bauman, thank you for being here with DNR. We're not even talking about the impact to our forestry and other paper products in the state of Wisconsin. I think the number I saw the other day was 25% of the cordwood that's produced in the state of Wisconsin goes through this mill. Again, those numbers, it's just enormous. So they're scrambling to try to find a way to find buyers for their product to maintain our timber and paper forestry products industry here in the state of Wisconsin, one of the biggest. Next to agriculture, it's the second, it's right there. This is our identity. This is something that we have always been, number one on making sure that we are in the country and across the world and the best producers that we have here in the state of Wisconsin. So I want to recognize the paper councils here today too, and Scott Suter, thank you for coming. Scott's got a valuable base of knowledge in some things, otherwise, he's just a guy, right? Scott and I go way back. He was one of my first early supporters way back when I didn't know what I was doing when I ran for state assembly the first time way back 20 some years ago now. So it's good to have some longtime friends here. And we've got partners from labor, we've got partners from city councils, we've got partners from chambers of commerce, we've got county boards, we've got United Way, we've got Midstate, we've got school districts. I mean, I look around the room and everybody, once we put out the call, everybody responded. And I wanted to thank you for that. So before we get to business, I wanted to introduce Senator Teston for his opening remarks, and then we'll get to work today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Krug, and thank you to Midstate for hosting this task force. As the wrap is together, we come together to address the issue of the day, and that's what needs to be done to protect the nearly 1,000 jobs that are going to be impacted if the Verso mill closes completely. It's hard to believe all the twists and turns that 2020 has thrown at us. We knew it was going to be a raucous year, but I don't think any of us could have envisioned the position that we are in currently. I mean, I remember just a few months ago, back in March, when we were at the Heart of the Chamber of Wisconsin Chamber Dinner to talk about all the economic successes that we've seen since the Great Recession and the resiliency of the folks here in central Wisconsin. And then we got the notice on June 9th that Verso intended to idle the mill. And it certainly sent shockwaves not only through the community, not only through the region, but through the entire state. This is going to have ripple effects that is going to impact the paper industry, the forestry industry. It's going to impact this community detrimentally if we don't come together and put our heads together to hopefully save these jobs and do what needs to be done. And I'm especially grateful for everyone's participation in this task force. As I look around this room, I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm confident that we can come together and do what needs to be done. I especially want to thank Representative Vandermeer, Representative Shankland. We have WEDC Secretary Missy Hughes here. Prior to us convening this first meeting of the task force, Representative Krug and I had the opportunity to be on a phone call with Governor Evers and Madam Secretary, and I'm confident that we can work with the administration to explore all options available. And I think the primary goal of this task force is going to be twofold. The first and most important is, what do we do to save the mill? What can we do to work with Verso to see if there's any incentives that we can provide them to stay here in central Wisconsin? If not, then what needs to be done to see if there is a potential suitor or buyer out there that we can entice to come in, turnkey for the mill, not to have them sell it off piece by piece, but to ensure that we keep this mill intact. As Representative Krug alluded to, this is a mill that has survived the test of time and so many trials and tribulations throughout our history. And it would be a shame to see the mill close its doors once and for all. I don't want that to happen on my watch. I know Representative Krug doesn't want that to happen on his watch. And I'm quite confident, as I look around this room, I think the same goes for each and every one of us here. Now, if for some reason that nothing can be done, we can't work with the company, or there's no interest, or there's no outside suitor to purchase the mill, then we need to be ready. We need to be ready to help those displaced workers and their families land back on their feet. And again, as Representative Krug alluded to, I do think we are in a better position economically than where we were going back to the Great Recession, just because in the last few years, we've seen such a great diversification right here in the greater Wisconsin Rapids area. With that being said, I'll keep it short, but again, I thank each and every one of you for your participation, and I think it might be beneficial if we now go around the room and do introductions. So, Katrina?
Should I stand up?
It's up to you, but yeah, it might be easier.
Yeah, to project my voice. Good morning, everybody. I'm State Representative Katrina Shankland. I represent Portage County in the State Assembly. My heart goes out to not just Wood County, but all of central Wisconsin. And I'm really appreciative of members of the administration being here and on the call, and the many people who are here from every branch of government, it seems, and it's local, state, federal, in addition to the many different folks who are here from all over the community. Looking forward to chatting about what we can all do together, and I appreciate the time.
Good morning. Hi, I'm State Representative Nancy Vandermeer. I represent the 70th District, and that includes a large part of rural Wood County. I have a corner of Portage County, Monroe County, and of course a corner of Jackson County that fills out the district. But I want to say, I really echo the thoughts that have been presented here already today. And I'm looking forward to moving forward to doing the best that we can for those that are involved in this.
Agenda.
People are really at the core of what's taking place. So how can we continue to have those people woven into the fabric of our local communities and moving forward economically and personally to those individuals, because this touches many, many people widely throughout our state and in fact throughout our country. I also chair the Rural Development Committee, and so this is near and dear to my heart as well. So once again, I look forward to working with you, and thank you again for being here.
Secretary, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Missy Hughes with WEDC. Obviously, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation is a key part of anticipating any opportunities we have with a potential buyer or working with Verso, and so we're looking at our toolbox to understand how we might be able to assist in this process. We're also going to work very closely with Secretary Cole from DNR, and Dan is here, and Secretary Crossman from DWD to assure that the administration's resources are here and able to help Wisconsin Rapids get through this as best we can. So look forward to all the discussion.
My name is John, just a forester from Verso, happen to be in the area.
My name is Mike Panther, I'm the local 94 vice president.
Chadwick Stumwalker, I'm one of the 30-year employees that you were just talking about. I'm also a vice president for local 94.
My name is Robert Casper, I grew up here, I was transferred out of this area with the Cops Company. I ended up buying a grocery store in the Madison area, an IGA store, and retired. I'm a geezer. I retired and finally come back here. I saw what was happening in Rapids. My family thought I was crazy, but I wanted to come back here and be part of what was going on here. I'm very optimistic of what can happen here. I go back to the 60s when the Minnesota Twins had a farm team here. I was one of the first employees to work for the Wisconsin Rapids Twins, and came back and talked to these new people that are buying the Raptors. And I'm very optimistic of what can happen there at Whitterfield. I'm very happy to see what happened at Whitterfield. And my kids, who are out of state now, are very successful. They thought this was a dying community, it's going to become a ghost town. Now, I don't want to see that happen. I think it could happen if we don't do something to help the mill. I've seen Madison lose a lot of businesses to Verona and to Middleton. And those communities helped out bringing more businesses into those communities. They even finance TIP districts to get people to move out of Madison to the suburbs. And I hope to see something down here in Wisconsin Rapids to keep Verso from leaving this area. Thank you.
I'm Dean Donovan. I'm an alderperson, City of Wisconsin Rapids. I'm a small business owner and entrepreneur. I love the Wisconsin Rapids Twins when I was growing up, although I wasn't old enough to work there. My family has a 130-year history in the paper industry, and been in paper all my life. I still have sisters. I was in it myself, and I'm just looking for a solution to keep the paper industry thriving in central Wisconsin. It's a vital part of our economy, especially in the Wisconsin Rapids area. Thanks for inviting me.
Terry Johns from United Way, Southwood and Evans counties. Of course, our focus with United Way is making sure that families have everything that they need to be successful, and we certainly want to make sure that individuals and families have that support. And personally, lifelong resident and multiple generation paper mill family, so I do echo Representative Crew and how this hurts our heart, and we need to make sure that we take care of our family here in Wisconsin.
Thank you. Go ahead, Scott. I guess Dan's going next then.
Right.
There you go.
Dan Baumann, Regional Director, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, here on behalf of Secretary Cole, who many of you know is a forester.
got his degree in forestry, so very in tune to what's happening here with the mill. Since this all kind of came about, the department's been pretty active in talking to the industry, because we know without markets, forest management doesn't happen. A landowner can't sell a product, county forests, the impacts to that, the loggers, the transportation, those that sell the equipment, maintain the equipment, sell the gas, it's got a big outreach. Our forestry division has a forest products section, and they're pretty active, very active, I would say, in trying to assess what's going on. And the question I think you posed earlier of what do we want the task force to accomplish? And from the department side, it's understanding the why. And then understanding who's impacted and how, so that we can help as a support agency, public service, figure out what we can do for the community, the city, whether it's wastewater or drinking water, air pollution, the mill itself. Are there product or market-based things that are causing the current situation to happen? And is there things within the department? Because we're a customer service agency that regulates our customer, which is pretty tough sometimes, but it's one that we can help with if there's, if we get feedback. Secretary Cole's been doing quite a bit of outreach to industry, whether it's the Paper Council, Great Lakes Timber Professionals, talk to Minnesota. As you know, Duluth is the other one, so our forestry folks are talking with the chief forester over in Minnesota to say what's going on over there. Can we do things similarly, whether it's Verso in general, and can we do things collectively as states to help support the activities happening? So we're here, we're at the table. Secretary Cole wants us to be at your disposal, talk about things that either he can work with Secretary Hughes in the governor's office, or if there's things individually that we can be doing as an agency. Again, I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Kim Emerson, our workforce center tested.
Bobby Euro with Mid-State Technical College. Again, I'm really looking forward to the process and getting all of the collective minds together and understanding the why and what we have to do next.
Craig Roran, Superintendent of Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools. I don't know that it's readily apparent what our involvement would be, but I think it's imperative that we have a place at the table as a significant organization in the community that can help support our families and kids in particular. So I'm open to ways that we can be involved and assist through this process by any means necessary. And I want to preemptively apologize as I have another commitment that I have to step off for right around 11, but I'm coming back and I don't like the appearance of coming and then leaving and thinking, so I just wanted to share that.
No, that's great. Thank you. Gordon, go ahead.
I'm Gordon Crowe with Synergy. Synergy is one of 9 economic development regions in the state. We all coordinate with WDC and Secretary Hughes. I have 5 board members here today, represented here today, and I'm excited about that. Our job is to react to what you request and do what you need to help you succeed in the tasks that you're going to discover and deploy starting today.
I think we're going to try to get people on teams.
Remind everybody
introduce
that
themselves after.
the footprint that you think has been adversely affected by this challenge is much bigger. Both the downside and the solutions that we will find.
Teams.
I can assure you that all 5 counties in central Wisconsin and all the counties around the state are interested in helping us. And I look forward to getting marching orders from you, my board members present here today to make that happen.
He's not calling in from the number I was given.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm from Congressman Tom Tiffany's office. As everybody said before, this is wide-reaching impacts, or just you?
Okay. Let's go in the back. Go ahead.
I'm Kathy Harrison. I'm USW Union Steward at Verso. Ironically, today is my 29th anniversary of the mill.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody's right around there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm Bethany Polchowski. I'm a Verso employee, but moreover, I'm a member of the industry overall. I do work with a lot of consulting foresters, logging truckers, and so my concerns are not just from the employees' perspective, but from the overall community. I'm really, really happy to see the show of support that we have here today.
Victoria Chilman.
Scott Suter, Wisconsin Pavement Council. I just want to say thank you for everyone for being here today. We've been in touch with many of you. We're working closely with the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association and, of course, the administration, but I especially want to thank our legislators for spending so much time on this issue. I know when this matter came to light, not 2 minutes later, I was on the phone with Senator Teston and Representative Krug, and Representative Van Meer, and Representative Shanklin weighed in immediately as well. I just want to say thank you for all the time and effort you're spending on this. I know that you're looking for a lot of commitment. This is a bipartisan task force that really is looking toward solutions. I also want to thank WDC for all the time you're spending on this as well, Secretary. But we appreciate it. We're standing ready to work with you on this matter, and this is a much larger concern. I know this deeply impacts Wisconsin Rapids and the surrounding area, but it's a statewide issue as well. This affects all of our members and all of our associates as well throughout the state and beyond the state. So we appreciate your efforts. We stand ready to assist our entire team and anyone for anyone in this room, and then on the phone, call us at any time. We'll help any way we can. Thank you.
I'm Tim Pavlik. I am president of USW Local 94. We represent the production workers at Verso, approximately 900 of them. I also represent the workers at Nine Dragons and Sunoco. My family has been involved in the paper industry, specifically the Rapids Mill. My grandfather worked there for a number of years after he moved off the farm. My father worked at the Verso Mill for 48 years. He never worked anywhere else from day one to his retirement at 65. I have a very vested interest to see that the membership that we represent, have opportunities. But I also am interested in the community's opportunities also. We need to ensure that this mill runs. And that's why we're here today.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Schweitzer. I'm a 13-year employee at Verso. I'm just really hopeful that I have a future there. I'm a local 94 rep too, so I have a direct line to the employees there. We're really concerned about the closure of the mill, obviously, and I'm just really hopeful that with the group that's here and everything that you guys are trying to set up, that we'll come to a good resolution for everybody in the community here, because it's a really big deal and it affects everybody deeply, so hopefully we can all work together.
Hi everyone, I'm Angel Whitehead. I'm the president for the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. I also want to thank everyone for being here. We collaborate on a daily basis with many of you in the room, and for those we haven't, we hope to collaborate more. But our mission is to really strengthen the local economy and enhance the quality of place. And the mill is a huge factor, not just the mill, but the workers and the outreach that they have. So we're here in any way that we can help collaborate and help you.
Go ahead. Sorry, in the back. Yeah.
Paul Fowler with the Wisconsin Institute of Sustainable Technology, UWP in Pond. And we really cherish the commitment you've built with the paper industry here in Wisconsin Rapids and in the region and within the state. We also take a broader world view on what's happening in paper manufacturing. And we see that this industry is not dying, but we see that the industry globally is really changing dramatically and very, very rapidly. And while there are dark clouds hanging over us today, we also see that there's a reason to be optimistic. We see that there's a real opportunity to innovate. And when we see what's happening in other countries, we see the evidence that supports this idea that we should 3 million tons of extra capacity being done by
Imagine people on video can hear this.
Right.
Probably very sure. I've got a couple of people texting me about that.
I don't think now is the time for us to kind of sit back and watch other countries take the lead. I think now is the time to lead ourselves. And I think maybe one thing this committee should consider is whether there's a scope for it to put together supporting information to make a really sort of credible case to support state investment in a really bold, in a really purposeful and a really strategic way to support the industry, not just here in Wisconsin Rapids, but as Scott has said, as Scott has advocated on the state, in the state as a whole. And what do I mean by bold? I'm talking about not an $8 million dairy innovation hub or a $38 million Kimberly Park, something on a Foxconn sort of scale that would support the industry as a whole, and then understand what are those strategic objectives that we can do in order to reposition, renew, repurpose equipment, but also innovate and retrain the workforce so that this industry, which we referred to at the beginning, as someone referred to as a legacy industry, is not a legacy industry, but it's here to support changing customer needs, changing demands for the next 100 years.
I'm Jenny Rush with UW Stevens Point. I serve as the director of our Office of Economic and Community Development. And as Paul alluded, I mean, we are definitely partnering with anybody possible to move forward with innovation and research. We have Housing Action Resources, we have the Forestry Unit. Paul is a tremendous asset with Wisconsin Institute for Sustainable Technology. So any way we can help to make sure we're on the leading edge of this instead of reacting to unfortunate announcements like this.
Shelley, go ahead. Sorry, Scott.
Sure, and I'm Shelley Mott.
Welcome and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free. There are 28 participants in the conference. Please announce yourself.
Meeting host.
And really to support the legislators and the state to really make sure that a difference can be made here, because it is going to take action. We have to be able to talk about it, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure we do have a strategic action so this doesn't happen again 2 years down the road. So, thanks everybody.
Good morning, I'm Scott Larson. I'm the president of the Marshfield Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's a real pleasure to be asked to serve on this committee. We recognize in Marshfield the importance of this industry, this company, and the jobs that it creates. We look forward to working with all of you. As Gordon mentioned, this is an impact not only to Wisconsin Rapids, but Wood County, the central Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin. And again, we look forward to being a part of helping you find answers and solutions to dealing with this issue.
My name is Shane Blazer. I'm the new mayor of Wisconsin Rapids.
Welcome to the job. But
thank you. Lifelong resident, though. My family's been here for generations. Just want to thank everybody for being here, and I appreciate all the hard work that we're going to be putting into this, and also appreciate Senator Tustin's comments about how we need the first approach needs to be we need to keep the mill going, and should that not happen, the second phase. But I think it's important to focus on the first phase.
Welcome and thank you for choosing
freeconferencecall.com.
You're helping people around the world communicate for free. There are 29 participants in the conference.
Verso.
Please announce
my city
yourself.
staff is already working on getting wastewater.
Meeting host reconnecting.
Businesses that are already tied to Verso to see what services we can provide as a city. I commit my city staff to whatever we need. I know they'll all be more than willing to help. Thank you.
Kyle Kearns, Director of Community Development for the City of Wisconsin Rapids. I appreciate everyone here. It really goes to show the community partnerships and that all of you in one way or another certainly value the city and recognize the importance of this. I think where we can provide professional assistance, we will certainly do so from an economic development standpoint. I think we can also certainly coordinate some efforts and through the mayor's office can be that conduit to the general public, ensuring that information as we move forward with different solutions. So thank you again for all being here today.
My name is Mike Wiskowski with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. I echo everything everyone has said before.
Hello, I'm Craig Bernstein. I'm the manager of workforce development here at Mid-State Technical College. To echo Shelley and Bobby's comments, Mid-State looks forward to being part of the solution as we take a holistic approach towards solving this problem. Whether that's the economic impact or developing the workforce or maybe upskill or new skills as we move forward. And also the community, the health and mental health of the community as well. So we look forward to being part of the solution as we move forward here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Todd Benke. I'm Business Manager, Financial Secretary for the United Association of Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 434. We represent 30 counties of the state in central and western Wisconsin. Not only do we represent plumbers and pipe fitters in the mill, but we also represent all the plumbers and pipe fitters that are working for the contractors that work for the mill. So we have a lot of vested interest. I've lived in Wisconsin Rapids, born and raised, and I will die here. Just ask my wife. And a little over 35 years ago, as a happiest day of my life, I got my pipe fitter apprenticeship at the Wisconsin Pulp Mill, or Rapids Pulp Mill. That's carried my career through, well, I'm doing today, but I do want to thank everybody here, the legislators and everybody else here, but I do want to just say that I think it's really important to have labor here. Through all the years, through the 58 years of my life, through everything with the mill going on, the labor's always been there to step up and help out. We've took concessions there, we've done whatever we had to do to keep that mill running. So I think it's very important to make sure we get the place of labor as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, and I apologize to the folks on video and phone that may not have been able to hear everything, but want to turn it over to folks on the call, and we'll work through this, how we're going to do this, John, to have folks on the call introduce themselves. I see Senator Bewley's on the call.
I think everyone on the video call should be able to just speak depending on the setting of their own computer. So unless they have muted themselves, I think everyone on the video call should be free to chime in. So,
all right, so what I'll do is I will call on those that I can see, and then we'll try to transition our view to see who else I can see. So Senator Bewley, go ahead and say hello to everybody, would you please?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here. As you can see, perhaps I'm in my car. There's the forest behind me. I'm on my way to a meeting in another part of the district. But I want to thank everyone for the attention that you are putting on this critical situation. My county is, of course, my district rather is the 25th, the northwestern corner of the state. And we have a mill in Park Falls on life support. This sort of thing is a part of our lives here. I just, for example, want to point out just how deeply this problem goes. It is 25%, by the way, that goes to Verso. We also have the Verso in Duluth that we are extremely concerned about. But here in Bayfield County, where I am, and right next door in Douglas County, the county forests are the two highest county forest producing counties in the state. And that is money that goes directly into the county coffers. On so many levels, these issues just permeate the entire state and affect us. We've got a laser focus right now on Verso, which is absolutely what we need to do. We need to bring everything we possibly can to the maintenance of that facility so that Wisconsin Rapids in the area can continue. At the same time, I think we need to also turn around and expand our entire focus onto what the forest products industry is in the state and what we need to do in the future. We have an organization that I'm a member of, which is the Wisconsin Forestry Council. It's been in existence for years, and it has many of the representation that you have with you today in that room and also on this call. Everything from forest products, the loggers, the conservationists, we've got the county forest association, we've got national forest on there, the Schwamick and Nicolay. It is such an important thing that we focus on today and tomorrow. We've got to maintain the highest use of the Wisconsin Forest Product Laboratory so that we can be ready to innovate and come up with the products that our world needs based on wood and on forestry. I will do anything that I can to help see to the well-being of Verso and have it thrive. And at the same time, I want to join in with all of my partners on this call so that we can find a strong and healthy forest economy in the future by capitalizing on those things that our world needs out of our forests. Thank you.
Thank you. I also see Representative Edming is on the line. Good morning, Representative Edming.
Yeah, good morning, Scott. Thank you for taking my call. Am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Anyway, I'm Representative Jimmy Boy Edming. I live in Russ County. I represent Russ, Sawyer, Taylor, portion of Marathon County and Long Township and Clark. And I can't say enough about how serious the logging lumbering industry is to my district. But since the news came out that something was going to happen here, I've had tons of conversations with loggers and with people involved in the forestry industry, and I'm willing to take the step forward and do whatever I have to do to help my friends from Wisconsin and wherever. Verso has a log yard that I literally drive past every day as I'm coming to work, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to either see that this place stays open or make it so it is open. So anyway, I'm here for the long haul, and if you need anything, don't hesitate, give me a jingle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy Boy. I see Mike Ladowski is on as well. Mike, you want to say hello to everybody and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Mike Ladowski. I'm the mill manager at the Wisconsin Rapids Mill. First of all, I would also like to say thank you to everybody here on the call. Thank you for taking the time and also for having the willingness and desire to help us through these tough times. And on behalf of the 900 plus employees at the Wisconsin Rapids, that's greatly appreciated. I'm not sure that everyone on the call is aware, but just to be certain, Verso has commissioned an outside firm for different alternatives for the mill, and that certainly includes the marketing and sale of the mill to someone that intends to use pulp. And the efforts of this task force should, in my opinion, certainly dovetail into that and not compete against it. Because I think that would be the best outcome for everybody here at the mill and the community. Outside of that, as mentioned before, I think another alternative the task force could consider is potentially finding a buyer outside the paper industry. Yeah, I think it would be secondary to running this facility as a pulp and paper mill. And then lastly, if none of that is successful, I would greatly appreciate if the task force used its efforts on the employees of the mill and things like retraining, unemployment and outplacing services, posting repairs on those to help our employees find new job opportunities.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I see our state treasurer is joined as well. Would you like to introduce yourself to folks I haven't met you before? Good morning, by the way.
Yeah, good morning, Senator Tustin. I just want to thank you and Representative Krug for hosting this task force today. In fact, I was looking at the invite list and it was incredibly encouraging to see such a diverse coalition of people coming across the state to address this issue. In addition to state treasurer, I'm also here wearing my hat as the chair of the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. And I think that we might be able to play a role in two different ways. The first is in economic development. We have been playing a role in economic development across the state for many years, most notably helping with Lambeau Field and also with the Brewers Stadium. Are some of our notable projects. And then the second role is with timber sales. that is a key part of our portfolio, and our partnership with the paper industry is essential. And any impact to that can have an impact on our revenue streams for public schools. And so I'm glad to be here. I look forward to figuring out how we can be helpful. And with that said, I also just want to point out that our executive secretary of the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands has also joined, and that is Tom German. Tom, I don't know if you want to say a few words and introduce yourself.
I saw you was there somewhere. Tom, you still on?
I'm still on. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you for inviting us, and thank you, Sarah, for having that great introduction. As she pointed out, the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands comes at this from two different sides. One of them, because we are such a big financier of public projects in the state of Wisconsin, we have more than $400 million loaned out to municipalities across the state for different projects, and a good chunk of that is for economic development. And we stand by ready to help in any way we can in terms of providing financing for economic development projects here. But secondly, we still have 75,000 acres of timberland in Wisconsin, and a majority of that is actually within the area of the Verso mill. And so the trees and wood products from our land go to that mill, and it's of vital importance to us because of the fact that our revenue from those lands is derived through being processed at that mill. And so it's of vital importance to us. And so we're here because we're looking to help in any way we can. Thank you for the invite, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Tom. We're also joined by our federal representatives, and especially here in the 3rd District, we have Representative Kine's office on. We've got a couple folks I see there. Amy Sue is on as well, and I didn't know who wanted to take the lead, but whoever wants to go. Okay, go right ahead.
This is Carrie. I'm with Congressman Kine's office in La Crosse. Happy to be here. Representative Kine has had a chance to reach out to both Verso administration and labor. I agree with a lot of what's said. He stands ready to help, and let's work together to save, create, and innovate new jobs. So then Amy Sue is on from Central Wisconsin, and Alex Eveland is also on, and he's with Congressman Kine in the Washington, D.C. office.
All right, thank you. Amy Sue, you want to say hello, or?
I don't think so. She's going to stay dark.
Yep,
Oh,
nope.
Okay, there she
Greetings,
is.
everyone. Sorry, greetings.
All right, well, just wanted to say hello, Amy Sue. It's been a while, so welcome and thank you for being a part and helping out. And we appreciate you being the Central Wisconsin connection to Congressman Kine. We'll go next to Senator Baldwin's office. I see Brian's on from Senator Baldwin's office. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for hosting this. It's great to see all of you again after the call a week or so ago. Look forward to working with the task force. I think Greg in our office is also on, so I'll let
there he is.
him say hello. Hey, Greg, what's going on?
Hello, yeah, I serve in the office as the regional representative and cover 15 counties in Western as well as Central Wisconsin, reaching out to Wood and Portage and Marathon as well. So glad to be on the call here and just echoing what a lot of other folks have said in terms of a great coalition being present here today.
Excellent. Anybody on from Senator Johnson's office? All right, we will move on then. I see some folks that we met last week again. Jane, North Central Wisconsin Workforce Development Board. I want to get the acronyms and names right. Go ahead, Jane. Say hello to everybody.
Good morning. Good morning. From the Workforce Development Board, of course, our first hope is that there is an alternative to keep the mill going, keep it operating. And if not, we are working with the Department of Workforce Development on securing funding, working with our job center partners to provide rapid response services, as well as really targeting with the Wisconsin Rapids Job Center to get that reopened. We just had a meeting this morning about that. But it is our goal is to respond to those impacted workers through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and services from there. So thank you.
Thank you. And then one of the lawyers who's been through this before, I want to turn over to Cindy to say hello. She's probably the one in this room and on the video that's probably got the most experience in these issues. So Cindy, thank you and welcome.
Good morning. I kind of hate to admit that.
I know, right? Me too, yeah.
I'm Cindy Kiesling. I'm the Executive Director for the Labor Education and Training Center. We're the provider for the Dislocated Worker Program. We provide the direct services to assist the affected workers, the company, and the unions during this entire transition. I, like many of you, was born and raised in this area and actually worked at the mill for a number of years. I know, like Scott, know a great number of folks who are still there and have been providing these services over a little over 30 years now. So I've been through the transitions with our Wisconsin Rapids mills, our Stevens Point mill, of course, our Domtar mills. They are devastating situations. There's no doubt about it. Workers are, sorry. We know the impact's going to be far reaching, and we're really hoping that it will be less than the entire workforce, but know that we're the ones who are here and we'll be here to support those folks who are affected.
Thank you, Cindy. I feel the same exact way. Thank you. I see we've got Wood County Extension, Jackie, I see you're on. Can you say hello?
Yes, Jackie Caratini. I'm with the UW-Madison Division of Extension here in Wood County, but then also representing Extension as a whole and access to those resources that we bring from UW-Madison. So all of our specialists, as others have said, you know, we're willing to partner and bring resources, whether it's on economic development, natural resources. We have specialists and faculty and staff willing to step in and help at any step of the way.
Excellent. I see as my view rotates, I see Stacy Johnson here at WDC as well. Can you say just a couple words, Stacy, and say hello to everybody?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Stacy Johnson. I'm the Regional Economic Development Director for the Central Region. I appreciate being part of this collaborative effort. I'm here to help and hopefully work towards a path forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if I've missed anybody on video, I apologize. And I know we've got the cadre of folks on the phone who have weighed in as well. And I think in the interest of time, I wanted to just say that I think that's what we're going to do for introductions today is we're kind of butting up against an hour here from saying hello, and I'd really like to get to work. So I wanted to at least acknowledge everybody who is on video and on the phone yet, and thank you for staying with us throughout this and being a part of it. I'd like to kind of get on to our agenda items if that's okay. So again, thank you everybody for your attendance and your help here. So number 3 on our agenda, and this, you know, as I said in our meeting a couple of weeks ago on Zoom as this first happened, we wanted to be fluid, but we also understand we've got time constraints, right? You know, as the news came out that the end of July is the end of production, here we are getting close to the end of June. Time is not our friend. So we need to find a very effective way to work together, and I think the most effective way is to make sure that we split up a little bit and kind of divide and conquer and make sure we're tackling different areas best we can. So, you know, I definitely have my ideas on where I think we can be great on developing committees. I see 3 really natural areas for committee work here that we can work together on a weekly issue, come together as a task force, you know, bi-weekly or a little later. But I think, you know, definitely if anybody has any other ideas than what I just wanted to present here, please stand up and weigh in, and as much as you can, be as loud as you can for the folks on the phone and on the video. It's kind of hard for them to hear everything. But as I kind of have heard everybody's introductions today, and as we've gone through the meetings and phone calls and everything else we've worked on the last few weeks, I think, first of all, I think the biggest committee area that we're going to have a need in is the business acquisition and economic development side, right? Can we entice Verso? Is there a package available? Is there something that WEDC can put together as a idea for us to work within that committee structure from county leadership, city leadership, state representatives, other interested partners in that business side, the economic development side. I think second is the community side. There is a very important reason. I'm glad Craig Brown was here to bring up that reason, that we've involved the school districts, that we've involved United Way, that we've involved, LITC and DWD, and trying to make sure that if nothing comes up, that we can't figure out a way to keep those lights on, those machines turning, that committee two, the community side, has employment opportunities, community support. I think working together with those two areas within that issue area is a very important subcategory of this task force. And I think third, something that has really come up a lot in the last week and week and a half in particular, not only from WIST's perspective and from UWSP's perspective, Paper Council and DNR, is the impact of forestry. And Senator Bewley brought it up as well, is that we've got to figure out a way to address the impact on the forestry community as well. It is something that I didn't see as an initial huge target area for this task force, but that's the tie into the rest of the state. So I think those are three very good committees that we can find ways to set meetings for. And I'm not necessarily going to assign people to committees, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows that we're not just here to listen. Everybody on the phone, everybody on video, everybody in this room, it's time, if you're here and listening, to commit, to be able to help out, provide resources, bring everything you have, every tool that you know of, to sit down with these committees that we will coordinate through our legislative offices and set schedules for and calendars for and agendas for and record meeting notes for, that you can be a part and that you're going to bring interest to. So I think if I will open the floor, and Senator Teston, come on up and weigh in as well what you think we can do in that area, but I will open the floor to Senator Teston and then to the general body to decide if there's other committees that want to be developed besides those three.
So I think Representative Krug's right on message there as far as the committee structure. So I guess maybe it might be helpful to go around the room if anyone on the call wants to weigh in or volunteer themselves to one of these committees or to make any recommendations, because as Representative Krug mentioned, I mean, this really has to be a task force that is committed to action and developing plans, a plan of attack to save this mill and preserve these jobs. And the longer we wait and the longer it takes for us to get rolling, the greater possibility that the inevitable, which no one wants to see happen, will come to fruition. And so I think it might be helpful at this time then, if anyone's willing to offer themselves or offer any recommendations, that way we can get rolling and then begin the process to get organized and get these committees to work.
So Jim, could you do me a favor and kind of track where we are in these three categories from business, community, and forestry to figure out as we go around, if you want to be a part of multiple committees, please weigh in and say what you're available to help out in your expertise. We'll have Mr. Emerson keep a record of that. And as we go around, if you have an additional idea, weigh that in too, and we will definitely consider any and all options. Shelley, go ahead.
And Scott and Ken, I just want to offer, I mean, I need to say thank you to our technology people, because as I'm sitting here, this is working. And sometimes being able to have over 30 people calling in and us being able to social distance and all of those things to protect all of you, that can be difficult. But I think you can all see it's very much working. So Bobby, and I think we've got Mike and Bill back there, just thank you. So as you do committees, if you need a place, because you need to use the technology, I think we've proven today we can do this. So just know that you have a commitment from us, that if you need to have a central spot, we would be more than happy to be that partner.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding Verso. Are they open to updating, creating new markets? I know the paper sales are down. And I'm just curious to see if they are open to retraining and keeping the mill going, or are they just...
Well, that's a great question that I think we can and put into these subcommittee structures that we can vet out and work with Mike and other folks from. Go ahead.
That's kind of the question I was asking the staff as well, maybe they didn't before. And I don't know whether it's outside the scope of this group or not, but having a look at it structurally, how the paper industry in Wisconsin works, and is there a space for the state to somehow intervene or assist in helping repositioning for exactly those new markets? Like we're seeing in other countries.
Yeah.
And that may be something that's on the table right now, because I understand there's a real short-term need. But I think there's a risk of just addressing the symptoms in one place, and then we see this thing happen again and again and again without getting to the root cause.
I had a meeting with somebody at the meet who's involved with Sunoco. Now, are they willing to buy more paper machines? Is Verso open to new people coming in, and how would that impact what's going on there?
And I think that's part of the, one of the conversations that we have to have, and I think that's going to be, as we move forward, as we work with the Evers administration as well as with Secretary Hughes to see what tools are available to maybe put together a package or ideas to see if they're even willing to entertain that. But then they have that other track on the table where if they're not, then we need to be able to see if there's a prospective buyer out there who would be interested in the mill.
And just to be clear, my intention with these committees, as we're forming them right now, is to meet weekly. And if you don't have a commitment that you can do weekly, please don't volunteer for it, because it's going to take some time, maybe an hour each week to kind of vet these things out. We'll have people that answer questions. But I think as we go through, and I would like to maybe start with Representative Shanklin, you'd like to maybe tell us where your interests lie. I know you've really brought up the work share concept. And I think I'd really love you to head that up with Verso in the community section of our discussion here on the workforce development side.
Sure. I mean, I'd be happy to do that. I'm very interested in the concept of buying time, since, you know, we have a little over a month, and if we can find a way for them to keep things running longer using work share or some other agreement, that would be helpful. I also wanted to suggest that, you know, we didn't mention this yet, but we do have a bipartisan legislative paper caucus. And I think that would be a proper vehicle to have the forestry discussion with the Forestry Council and some other groups. If you were to involve them, I think that might be the right spot, not to speak for the entire paper caucus, but because it's a statewide impact, and because we already have members from the Northwoods and who are very active in the forestry side of the equation in the paper caucus, it might make sense to try to get both the Forestry Council and paper caucus involved in those conversations, so it isn't just a central Wisconsin conversation, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think that does. Scott, you want to weigh in a little bit on what your thoughts might be on something like that? I mean,
Well,
I don't want to speak for the entirety of the council and the membership. I mean, it's a huge membership in the sector that we would try to pull together, but.
I think it may behoove, in terms of streamlining, to have a representative of the paper caucus with the paper council, and maybe have representatives from key industry leaders like Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association, rather than having the meeting of the minds, because obviously it's election season, and there's a lot going on, and we can't meet in person necessarily, but I think we can find a subset of those groups to get together and then report back to the larger group. Does that make sense?
That's fine. I think we can do that. So let's focus our task force efforts on the original two. On trying to find a way to keep the mill open and keeping the opportunities available for employees. And as we work through the forestry issues, we'll work through that with a subset of the paper caucus and involve other legislators in the administration. Fair enough? Excellent.
And we do have, I just want to say, we do have people on the line who are messaging in and willing to be participants on the committee. So thank you to everyone who's chiming in on the private message board here. So thanks for your support.
So Scott, I would suggest.
You have to raise hand. I didn't even know who was talking.
Oh, wait, I realized that. That's what I was saying that. So I would, Stacy Johnson is on the line. She's very, very passionate about the paper industry. She's been giving me all sorts of information. So I would suggest that we have Stacy chair the subcommittee on the economic development side, so that we can funnel these conversations, because I think there's a lot of different conversations going, but if we know that things are coming to this subcommittee and to WEDC, then we can be aware of all the moving parts. As everybody has said, we have an incredibly short period of time to act here, so I think we got to try to figure out how to get these conversations into one pot.
Stacy, you on?
I am on, yes.
You want to work side by side with Senator Teston and I to make sure the administration spills on the economic development side?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So
Thank
I
you.
think we got a structure set there. So community side, I was hoping that Terry Johns would help chair that side of the discussion. I think you've done an amazing job with United Way and bringing together partners across the city of Wisconsin Rapids and the greater Wisconsin Rapids area. And I think your outreach and your connection with everybody is probably the best in the room to be able to handle that. I hate to put more on you because you do so much already, but if I could ask you to help coordinate the community meeting side of it, where we've got folks from workforce development and folks from the community coming together to make sure employees are taken care of and families are protected. Absolutely. I would love to work with you on that. Sure. So I think that would be a great structure for us to move forward with, and I would appreciate that, and I thank you for that. As we continue our discussion here now, if you want to weigh in publicly on where you'd like to be committee-wise, one or two, you can do one or two or both, but I'd like to just kind of go through the room and get a one or two or both, and so we can get on to the further discussion. Yes, sir.
Well, can I just come back to the question about strategic repositioning of your district? Is that something that we can work on?
Yeah, I think we're going to work with, I think Representative Shanklin and I will start working together with paper caucus members and trying to pull together something on the side. I think that's a longer term thing that I don't think I have to do immediately, but I think that's a good point to bring up at this point. So I think that's a good idea. All right, so.
Senator Tustin, this is Jane Spencer. I just wanted to mention that we will work with Terry Johns on the community impact between LETC and the Workforce Board so that we can keep everyone up to date on what we're doing for rapid response and job center services. And I would also include Tyler Drake on there. He's on a call. He couldn't get through the teams, but we work as a partnership already, and I think that we can add to that community impact group.
Thanks, Shane.
And for folks on the phone or on video, I mean, if you have your preferences and you can use the chat to message the host, or we can call on you when we get through the room. I think we can get to everybody if we just go through the same process we did earlier, just go one by one, everybody's opinion and move on instead of kind of hodgepodging out our way through. So I want to
Excuse me, this is Senator Bewley. Could I just interject for 1 minute before I lose my connection? I'm going into the woods.
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go into the woods and then you're not going to hear from me for a while. So
I hope that's not the case.
Try.
Yes.
I just want to reemphasize the existing state forestry council I just encourage you to take a look at it, see the broad range of participation that we have on that council. It is it's in statute that this council exists. We have immediate access to a large amount of staff support. It can do a lot of work. And again, one more thing before I leave. I am convinced that we have enough intelligence, infrastructure to figure out a way to capture a market on masks that are based on wood fiber. I'm convinced. Okay, I gotta go. Bye.
Thanks, Senator.
So Representative Shakley, I imagine you want to be involved in every aspect, correct?
Sure, yeah, however.
If you got the time,
I'll be on the calls probably.
Thank you.
Vandermeer, same?
The same.
Okay, good. All right. So that takes care of legislative. We're all set to do everything. And Senator Bewley's comments are right. And I think if you can help me spearhead that with Dan Bauman, to make sure that paper council and the forestry side is connected, I think we'll make that a subcomponent, and I would appreciate that help on that. Excellent. So, all right. We've got some folks here that may not have the best of availability. I know that. I get that. Especially if you're still working in production and you've got a lot of stuff to do. I get that. So I don't want to exclude anybody from the committee structure, but again, it's a once-a-week commitment. We're going to have meeting dates and times set by the end of today, hopefully, where we can start. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, say, Scott, myself and my staff will commit to both committees and whatever resources we can put at it.
Todd, how do you think your availability is?
And I guess I failed to mention, too, I'm the president of the Wood County Labor Council, so I'm involved with that. I'm also on with the Department of Workforce Development. I see a lot of good people in the room for the community stuff. I'm willing to do either one.
Okay.
But because we've got so many good people for the economic development in the room, the community, I think they're gonna be a really good committee. I'd be willing to go on to economics or both if see, and I got a resources in my offices.
I think it might be beneficial if we have labor represented on both committees, so that way we're doing what we can on the labor side to retain these jobs, but then again, if something were to go south, then we've got labor to be part of the solution that land these people on their feet.
And that's exactly right, because if there comes an opportunity where there is a package we put together to a buyer or to Verso, I want to make sure that your voices are represented, that the package looks like something that can be viable, that, we're not going to try to force down anybody's throat, that there's cooperation and coordination on making sure that it works. So if you, and other labor participants in the room, from all the unions that are at this mill, were there 7 of them total?
And then that's the thing is I'm like all of them, tons of them, most of them. And so I'm willing to work with that and work with them guys too. So.
I would love if they could filter, I mean, if that's okay with the rest of the labor representatives, to filter through Todd to bring concerns to the committee.
Like a direct connect.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
People in that facility.
Okay.
You would like a direct connection.
Fair enough. And then we'll coordinate with you, Todd, to get membership and to get information out to the production workers too. On dates and times for meetings that they know when they're gonna happen and where. And we'll try to accommodate as many people as we can. We'll make sure that it's open to production, but I would count on you to take the information that we present back to the production and to let them know what's going on, if that's fair enough.
Just Kevin on the call.
We have a lot of meetings to get to our membership here.
Good, that's what I need. I mean, the first day I probably took 60 calls from members individually, so that's what we kind of need to do is coordinate that so we can streamline things, so. What else? That's it.
Yeah, obviously, Midsec will be involved in both committees.
So what we'll do, actually, sorry, just tell, so Jim has your name.
Sure, yeah, so Craig Bernstein, Manager of Workforce Development. I will be involved with the community workforce support, and Bobby will be a representative for the business economic side.
Obviously, WEDC, we're counting on you, obviously, in the acquisition side. I don't know, we don't really need to worry about the community side so much. I think we got a lot of membership there. So keep WEDC involved with that and work it through Stacy. But we definitely look to have some involvement as you can.
Oh, I will be, yeah.
City, we talked about already. Scott, Marshall, you got a lot of experience in the community side. I'd love to see if we could be in part of that with
No, I would see, and I won't speak for Angel, but I would see the chamber being, we're involved in workforce development, we're involved in economic development. I would see us as a hybrid that would work well in both of those arenas.
Okay. And then UWSP?
I think you're gonna be on both. You can't do it. I don't know if you, so Jenny Rush for the committee and Paul Fowler for the economic development.
Angel.
Yeah,
I think I need you for both, sorry.
Yeah.
You're volunteering.
Well, actually, I was just gonna say I'm volunteering my staff to do things, so I'll sit on the, I'll sit on the business and economic development, and Kristen, who's our vice president, is in charge of our workforce development, so she'll sit on that committee now.
Labor we talked about. Paper Council, how would we like to involve Paper Council? I would love to see you on the Keep the Mill Open Business Acquisition Team, if that's possible.
I thought you weren't assigning.
Well, I was kind of wishy-washy here, but now I'm getting more forceful because time's committed here, so you're.
We would be happy to be on both, if possible. I'll assign one of my team members who handles forestry and workforce development, one of our VPs, for that arena, and we'll fit in both, if that's all right with you.
Carrie's got a lot on her plate, we know what she's up to. Dean Veneman, I would love to count on your experience in the paper industry on the business and economic development side. You've been through closures before.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you. Next, love to have active community participants. How do you think you'd be able to bring some, I think you bring a lot of questions to the table, and I would love to see that in one of our.
Well, I've been in business and I'm considering getting into business again, so I would like to see the mill kept open. I have a grandfather, my dad, uncles, they've all retired from the paper mill. I have an nephew working there now at Verso. So whatever we can do to keep the mill open, even if we have to invest in it, I think the city should be considering that, because whatever it takes to keep Verso here. Now, I'm probably opening a can of worms. I don't want to get political, but I saw what happened to a lot of businesses in Madison, and Railback for one, moved out to Middleton. I don't want to see anybody leave Wisconsin Rapids, whether it goes out of state or whether they decide to open a mill in Canada or what. I am very interested in keeping the mill open, even if it takes new technology, new markets. We need to keep Verso here, whatever it takes. Otherwise, we're going to have a full stop.
Look out, Jeff, number one. Can you give Mr. Emerson your name?
Robert Casper.
Thank you. All right, go right ahead.
Who's going to be in coordination or communication with Verso to see the requirements of selling it or, taking it over with you?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna spearhead. I mean, that's the next conversation. We're gonna be heading over at some point here to go visit Mike and reach out to Ohio and try to make sure that we got top level conversation going before the next committee meeting on the business side, on the economic development side. So Senator Testman and I have already committed that if we have to go to Ohio and find out exactly what the plans are. Mike laid it out that there's a committee and a structure going on within Verso already. I need information on that. I don't have any right now.
Right, you're going to need that.
So that was the first I heard of it, so
Yep.
I'm glad to hear it, but I just want to let everybody know it's the first I heard of it too.
Yeah, so Mike will be reaching out from our offices to schedule time to maybe sit down and get briefed on next steps and then what we can do to work with you and see what needs to be done.
Okay, sounds good.
You guys want to active sit on committees? You want to filter through? I'm sorry, what?
I'd like to be on that.
Okay, perfect. Give Mr. Emerson your name.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, what? I'm sorry, your name.
Chadwick Stallmark.
Got it. Sorry, mask, I can't tell everybody is, sir. Same, or what are you thinking, or?
I probably can't make it.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine too. I get that. Did I hear you were Verso forestry side of the equation?
Just an employee, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Any involvement, any discussions that we're working through and?
I'm sure my supervisor would like to be, but.
Okay. I'll give you my contact information. You can deliver that to your supervisor there. Excellent. Mr. Baumann, this is where you get to assign all kinds of people to us and tell them where to go and how to be a part. So I'd love to have DNR on both, obviously, and still work with Representative Shanko on the forestry side. So.
Yeah, we have forest products section that is definitely included on some of the, where's the market, what's happening in the market type of information. And community, of course, we're a basic infrastructure anyway, and the environmental side. As far as the workforce development, probably not so much, since we're more regulatory.
Well, I did, okay, so let me put it out there. I told Secretary Hughes a little earlier, but, so I'll put it out there, and that's why I thought of this as workforce development for DNR too, is that I've heard from a source in Escanaba that there's some players in the forestry industry that are working to collaborate towards something with the mill.
Oh.
So I'd like to have DNR involved, help me vet this out and figure it out.
Yes.
So that's the only reason I brought up all the communities.
I've heard that as well.
So there's fair disclosure for everybody that I've heard.
Yeah.
So. Superintendent, thank you so much for bringing up your point earlier and for asking to be a part of this task force, because as we went through this with Port Edwards and went through this with Whiting, I remember being involved in those discussions too, and the massive impact in our schools and our community through that. So I would love to be more of a Terry Johns, bringing together folks from your side of the equation and just making sure families and kids know what options exist within your realm of the world, if that's feasible and possible for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all.
Good. Bobby, you've been volunteered already. There you go. Good. Thank you.
Gordon?
Gordon.
Like I said, I have 5 board members here. They will give me my assignments.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Scott's actually chairman of the board.
I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
we'll come up with some percentage. I'm sure our central district center,
Okay.
traction product will be a bigger problem.
Caitlin, you're gonna be busy reporting on all these things, right? You'll be at every meeting and, all right. Go ahead.
So I really have an interest in the either, but business acquisition is something that I think for sure that our office takes it on. If we use or both, we can definitely make both.
Yeah. Give you guys' name. Can you tell Jim your name again?
Dylan.
Tiffany's office. Yeah. Back in the corner.
I work shift work, so I can't really.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure. Go ahead, Sam.
Forester with Verso, so I don't know where I would best fit. I work with John, and so we certainly will get our boss involved in whatever needs to be, but I just want to say I do work directly with GLPA and community water, so I communicate back and forth. I don't know if that helps anybody either, but
Right.
somebody who can.
Okay, so I think everybody's kind of got an idea what their roles are going to be. I think the next topic is to figure out when we're all going to meet again. I know schedules are tough, and I don't want to be the guy that just says we're going to do this without a little bit of input at least, but I don't want to hash through a half hour of who's all available what days. So I would love if each of these committees could at least meet once.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
Scott, could I respectfully suggest that maybe each committee have a quick huddle today? And what I can do is do a scheduling tool online, and that might permit everybody to weigh in with a minimum of fuss. I can share that email, or rather an email for each of the committees with the entire group by email tomorrow.
We'll see. I don't know about huddling up already today. We'll try to get through the rest of our agenda, but I just wanted to make sure as we develop the committees that as we get through our discussion today, I want to open it up for questions for everybody so you can kind of figure out some things that you may not know that we may have heard and have an open discussion. But as we go through here the rest of the afternoon, my hope is to be done. I don't want to take everybody's time all day long, right? So I'd like to obviously be out of here hopefully a little around the noon hour. But 1 o'clock at the absolute latest, everybody get back to what else is going on around them too. So I want to make sure that we commit to meeting at least once each committee in the next week. Same with Representative Schenken and I, meeting at least once in person sometime this week so we can kind of go through this forestry idea. So if you've got availability sometime this week or even a half hour that we can talk to each other on the weekend to kind of set something up for next week to start working on that idea, that'd be great. I would love these committees to be meeting next week at the latest. So we're not gonna, I mean, we'll get back to that time and date. We'll set that up before we're ending here today, but I don't want to do it immediately because I don't want this whole meeting to be just about process. I want to have some information exchange and some things that we can discuss. So is there another agenda item we can deal with while we start thinking about the calendar? What do you see on the agenda that we haven't touched on?
Let's see. Status of the mill. I mean, we kind of touched on all of these for the most part.
Okay, yeah. So let's, all right, so one of the agenda items we did talk about is the status of the mill, all right? So one of the things that I need some information on that I haven't had a lot of information on is the interaction between management and employees, what they've heard, who is staying for how long, who's getting laid off when. Has labor heard of a strategy from Verso? And I think first of all, I turn over to Mike maybe for a strategy from Verso's perspective on how exactly this timeline works so we know what we're dealing with before the end of July. So Mike, do you have some input for us on how this process of the proposed shutdown is going to work?
Yeah, we had planning on the last paper production before going into an idle state right around the end of July. That date is still valid, and that's what we're planning towards in terms of getting the mill into that idled state. And at that point, there's going to take a little bit of time to get the mill in a state where it could be started back up. We loosely refer to the term idled state, but you know, that takes a bit of time. It's not just shutting things down and leaving them. So we're anticipating that shortly after the end of July, maybe a week or so, a vast majority of our employees will be on a layoff status. We'll continue some of the work to get the mill in a idled state. And then at that point, the only operations in the mill will be part of our converting operation and our wastewater treatment plant and the services needed to supply number 2 paper machine, which is a Sunoco machine.
Mike, just curious, have there been any discussions about the hydro operations?
That's not part of the mill. That's owned by Queco.
Okay.
That's not part of this discussion, part of the announcement.
So then, I get a lot of questions from people in the community, Mike, about what's going on with Sunoco, what's going on with pulping operations. I mean, is there a plan for Sunoco? I mean, it's still running fully under your idling. I mean, we're not affecting them at all, or?
Yeah, we have a contract with them, and we're going through negotiations of that contract right now.
Okay. And then from the labor side of the coin, have you heard any? It's everybody, right? At the same time done, or is there stages, or what have you heard?
It's all depending on what Mike said there.
Well, based
What
on
Mike discussed last week is that there's a 3-phase plan out there. That would, first phase is, shutting the mill down, locking it out, securing it. Second phase would be, making sure that it is secured, going through the tanks, checking that it can survive the winter, if that would be possible. And then the third phase that Mike explained to us last week is that the majority, that there'd be very skeleton crews to operate, then the services for ND and for Sunoco.
Okay. Because that's one of the areas that I think Cindy and Jane, as you help us out in our subcommittee structure, is working closely with DWD. As they've told us, as they approach this time, they're going to have a dedicated team to deal with some of the unemployment compensation issues if we get to that point. Because I mean, it's whatever the reason is, and I'm not going to get into the politics of whatever, but unemployment being tough already right now, when we hit that bottleneck in July or August, I should say, I guess, we need to maybe work through that process with DWD as part of the committee or the community subcommittee to find out DWD's plan for a dedicated team to deal with this, because that's going to be a huge pressure on a system that's already burdened right now.
Just some commentary. The problem we have, I think, and like qualifying for trade assistance and all that kind of stuff, is that the mill is going to go into idle status. Okay, it's going to shut down in idle status, not a permanent closure. So I'm not sure if we're going to be burning through unemployment that we would need to go to school while we're in idle status.
Okay, right.
And you don't want to tell the mill, hey, we got to make a decision now, shut it down so
Sure.
we can move on. You don't want to do that either. So we're kind of in a tough spot.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if Jane or Cindy, if you could hear that, but we were kind of just having that discussion right now on the status of eligibility for retraining in an idling situation versus a shutdown, and just vetting that out is another important category that needs to be addressed within the next week, just so we know DWD's full assessment of how people are going to be considered eligible for what, and all those issues are going to come around that. So I think if you guys could spearhead that for us in those discussions and have that ready for us next week, at least having a conversation with DWD. Go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, I just want to add something to the DWD conversation, because yesterday I, heard from them about this situation. Obviously, they're very familiar with it. Secretary Crossman was on the last call.
Right.
Yep.
But I want to make clear that because the known reason for unemployment, because there's a WARN notice and obviously DWD is aware of it, it should be, while it's not a guarantee, it should be quicker for those claims to be processed because they're unlikely or less likely to go through adjudication and all the other things. So
Right.
I just want to make that clear that not to set out expectations that everyone should expect, months of waiting and things like that, that they're aware and that process should be timely.
All right, and then, now that I kind of worked through that, I wanted to kind of double back, with you, Mike. So you mentioned this process that you're working through with corporate on possible acquisition and putting it out for concept to people. One of the things I think Senator Testa and I are going to touch base with you in the next day, probably even, is if we can hear more about that process. I don't know, obviously you don't want to make it fully public in every aspect, I'm guessing, but I think there's just some information that we're going to need at least so we can try to coordinate any possible incentive packages with WDC and Governor Evers. We're going to kind of need to know, who might be out there. I mean, that's something that I talked to the Paper Council about. If Verso is out and they don't want it, we need to have a plan B. But if Verso can stay and we have a package, I want a plan A. But I want to be able to rely on you a little bit, Mike. And I know it's a tough position for you, kind of being in management and not speaking for corporate necessarily. But I think that's something we need to have a little information about if you're able to help weigh in offline on that.
Right, we can certainly have that conversation of that idea. The firm that Verso's commission hasn't even been announced yet, so I can't speak to that right now publicly, but we can talk about what the intent of that group is offline.
Thanks, Mike.
See any other issues that need to be dealt with on the mill operation? Any other questions or concerns from anybody on the mill operation and mill status?
Along with what he had said there, I think there's a big dependency on unemployment. And I know people that have applied weeks ago and still aren't getting their unemployment. So I think we need to be more focused on training for people that will be let go. That probably should come out before they say, well, I'm out of a job now, I'm gonna expect unemployment.
Right.
Judging from what's happened in the past year, I don't depend on the government for anything.
Not to get political, but amen. Just kidding. So I think that really kind of gets us on an even keel. That's the only thing I didn't have is a lot of information on exactly what the plan is. So that's something that we need to closely work through our committee structure and find out exactly what that plan is going to be. So we know when we're looking at possible packages for either Verso or somebody else, we know that labor's involved and committed, that they're available, that they're ready to talk. We can have a representative that is trusted, and I don't know all the relationships between labor, but it might be easier if we don't have 7 and we have a couple or a few. I'm not trying to pick on anybody or anything, but definitely steelworkers, obviously.
So yeah, the steelworkers are gonna want to speak on any committee. Denny Lauer, our staff rep, is on the call. I don't know if he has capability of speaking or not.
I think on the phone we can't unmute.
I don't think he has the capability, but he's been messaging me. Okay. So you guys contact him?
Yep, absolutely.
He wants to be involved in all of these things. Doing everything to save this company.
Good.
I'm sure they're all calling on people too.
Before you leave today, could you make sure that we have contact information either through Mr. Emerson or Mr. Reineman, just to make sure that whoever. Excellent. Next topic of discussion, we talked about a little bit of these each. I just want to make sure we go through and talk about any questions that are out there. Number 6 was taking care of the workforce. Benefits workers can access. We talked with Shane and Cindy. United Way was another big one that I overlooked, so I'm glad Terry's here to kind of talk about the second side of it. I mean, we've been through the ringer before. We've had companies that have unfortunately downsized enough that in any way here in the Wisconsin Rapids area has been able to coordinate with not only direct services, but with our food pantries and other assistance too. So that's something that I keep vetting out through our committee structure. If you have anything else to add, that would be great. Otherwise, for sure. Retraining, we're gonna, obviously we're gonna rely on Cindy and Jane on the retraining side of it as well. Options in the area we talked about before for employee retention in the area, that's obviously a big thing for me. Retention of the workforce, whether it's at the mill or in the capabilities of the community. We are going to be reaching out to other manufacturers in central Wisconsin and Wisconsin Rapids in particular. They haven't been necessarily contacted yet. Maybe we've talked to ND a little bit. But definitely going to be speaking with, the Ocean Sprays, the NDs, the Metalcos, and any other, when we talk about the acquisition side of it in our subcommittee, that's part of what we're going to be talking about too, is who are the other manufacturer players who can bring in some of this workforce if nothing else works out. So it's something we're going to vet out next week too, unless anybody had any.
And Angel, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, several manufacturers and local employers that are looking to hire specific skill sets that actually come from the mill have reached out to me with their contact information.
Stop at the station. We feed waters in Wisconsin. And that would be a hell of a good place.
I think we've talked about business retention recruitment just a little bit right now too. So I think from my perspective, that reaches our agenda items. If you have other questions or concerns, now is a great time. I was looking at the calendar, that's why I demurred a little bit on that earlier, because I know next week is the 4th of July week, right? So.
Craig?
Scott, in fact, thank you. I just wanted to point out though, what we should ensure is that there's some kind of continuity around education. If we're talking about putting together resources and supports for families and so forth, timing is everything. I mean, Terry and I could get together and have something sent this afternoon, which is not going to do our families any good. And I know that's not the request. But my concern is because of the size of the committee. Yes, the multiple layers and all those things that are going on that we're either too far in front of or too far behind the wall. And the circumstances around unemployment, all these pieces coming together just create where a communication plan and time is going to be very pivotal with regard to just about everything. And the other piece that I toss out there is, although we typically shy away from, being like the community message center, I think this is broad enough and problematic enough that we can serve to provide some updates to our community at large. And of course, there's a significant number of staff and parents that have Verso, direct Verso ties as well. So to think about what that communication campaign might look like in any aspect, in any terms of anything that's transpiring around, even at the political level, or at the here's some assistance level, or by the way, you're not going to get unemployment for 6 months. So what the heck are you going to do? Helping through that process as well.
And I'm glad you came because that was something that I wanted to talk about. We've worked with our LTSB this week on developing a website. John, do we have a actual link for our task force website through LTSB?
We have a link. It is not nearly as brief as what they promised us. So what I'd like to do is get a custom domain and link it that way.
Okay, so by next week, when we have our committee structure in place, we'll have a custom domain for Wisconsin Rapids Task Force or something like that, that we're going to rely on each and every one of you to be able to distribute to your distribution list. It'll be the central focal point for adding information to the community. So not only just getting the information out through your distribution list, like you mentioned, but we need you to feed us the information. And I know that my staff and Senator Testa's staff will be able to upload to that. I really like to count on Senator Shanklin and Representative Shanklin's staff, or Representative Shanklin and Representative Vandermeer's staff. We'll also maybe help add collaborative links to this website. That's going to be the one community gathering point for everything, right? So I need you to feed us information. And then once we have that domain, I need you to be able to send that domain out to the wide list as we possibly can, whether it's United Ways, whether it's the schools, whether it's unions or HARP and getting members involved, or mayor through whatever city list we might have. Or that was one of the big things we worked on this week, is trying to make sure that there's a main connectivity point where you can click and find a link for whatever things we're talking about. Like that's 60, 70 links. unemployment assistance or community assistance or the business side of the coin, of where can I go get a job, or the job center links, and all of those type of links we're going to be dropping into this format that hopefully even the media can help put out too. And if you've got questions or concerns, here's the place. Contact numbers for your federal reps, your state reps, your community reps, your county reps. And drop it all into one central location. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I totally forgot. John?
I will have that link before I leave town today, so I'll just hit a quick reply all on the email you got with the updated agenda, and you'll have a fairly short, usable link you can share with people.
That includes folks that weren't on the initial invite.
Right, it's a website. Yep.
No, but I'm saying your email will include folks that were not on the initial invite.
I'll have the second invite that I sent late yesterday is who I plan to send it to.
I don't think I got that one either.
All right, we'll make sure.
Okay.
We're trying, the list is getting big. We're trying to make sure everybody's on it. And again, if you're reaching out to folks and they're saying, I don't know what's going on, you can let us know too at any of our legislative offices, whoever you like to work with the most. We'll make sure that you're connected as possible as to whoever you want, whenever you want. I am committed. I'm on my other job, I'm a realtor, and it's busy season for realtors, right? We love buying and selling, right? I'm shutting it off right now, okay? It's time. We got to commit. Next week is crunch week to kind of get some real details on what we're going to see happen and what we're going to do. So my goal is to have one committee meet, what did I see? On the 30th, next Tuesday. The other committee meet the 1st, next Wednesday. So anybody that's completely unavailable, that is absolutely vital, that can't make those, please let me know offline. But we're going to get dates and times for one on the 30th and the next on the 1st. So we're going to get that out to the list too. If you're not on the list and didn't get an invite and you just happen to show up today, please make sure you connect with Mr. Emerson or Mr. Reineman before you leave so they have their contact information. That's the goal, that the 30th, it'll be the same time frame, 10 a.m. on the 30th, 10 a.m. on the 1st. Until we're done, whichever day, we'll coordinate with Midstate to get rooms available. And we'll get that information out to you, hopefully by the end of today, if not early tomorrow, so you can have specifics on when and where. Agendas might follow, but I think we kind of talked about agendas today and what we're really going to do. So we're going to need as much specifics you can bring to the table for your committee meetings, ideas that you have available for your committee meetings. Those committee meetings are going to be longer than what we did here today, right? It's going to be very detailed, going to be a lot more questions. And those are the things that we're going to cut out in that longer format. So if anybody's totally objecting to any of the formats or technology we're talking about today, please speak up. That's the best that we've got available to us right now. Representative Vandermeer, anything to add, or?
No, I'm just thinking about
Okay.
a lot of different
Right.
areas, questions that I may have a little bit later this week.
Yep, bring questions, and if you've got questions between now and then, call. Definitely make sure you text, call, email. We'll get as much out as we possibly can, but everybody needs to know everything else everybody knows next week. Anything else for the good of the order?
I was just wondering if anybody here knows whether that $600 will continue to be unemployment or if that's going to be done at the end of July?
Well, that's something that Congress is going to have to work out. And from my understandings, and I'll turn it over to maybe somebody from Senator Baldwin's office, if they're still on the line, about the extension of the $600 per week possibility that I've heard minimal discussion on, so I don't know if it's much of a reality. Anybody from Senator Baldwin's office still on? Maybe anybody from Representative Kyne's office?
Yes, this is Carrie. I am still here. I don't know offhand, so I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, fair enough. That's what the whole process is about, is getting information. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any others?
All right. Again, not to try to overkill the gravity of the situation, but time is our enemy right now. Representative Shanklin, I would love to talk with you more about connecting with Verso on the work share idea. sometime
Good idea.
even before we leave here.
Yep, let's talk, but I'm working on a letter as we speak. My staff is typing it, and we're gonna have it edited and sent to every member of the legislature who wants to sign it by hopefully the end of the day.
Great, thank you.
Asking for a call, and then we could just, a few of us could be on the call to just see if they're aware of it, and if they'd like to connect with our DWD folks to talk details. But obviously, we want to try to offer this to them as soon as possible. So
Good. I
Thanks for
wanted to
doing
make
that.
sure that was your idea. I want you to make full, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Dan?
On Representative Shanklin's topic there, not only the mill workers, but as we know, there's 500, 1,000 loggers, transportation folks as well that'll need to be linked into those things. I know you're already thinking about that, connected to that group, but just wanted to highlight that as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I mean, just think about all the things you gotta do, you know, all the outreach that everybody's gotta do in their communities and their spheres right now. Make sure they're connected, make sure they're getting information, make sure they're distributing information. I think we're gonna bog down the internet next week here in central Wisconsin, so be prepared. Your Netflix may not work for a couple hours here and there, so. Yes, ma'am.
This website that we're gonna put together, who's gonna kind of spearhead it so that we can vet the information that's getting dropped in there and we make sure that it's reliable and viable and it's accurate?
Yeah, you know, our legislative offices are gonna take links and information that we can. We will vet through them as best we can. I don't know if there's any other method that we can do besides work through our legislative offices to coordinate that. So that's the best idea we've got. If something shows up that may not suit somebody, let us know, but I can't imagine there would be anything on there that's going to be controversial or political or anything like that. It's not.
I just don't want inaccuracies, you know, there's a lot of rumors, we have a lot of stakeholders in this, and there's a lot of rumors that are flying around, I just want to caution to make sure that something doesn't get on there yet.
And I think that's a great
Absolutely, yeah.
discussion for our committees next week too, as we're sitting there. What do we want to get out? What do we want to let people know of? I mean, there are going to be things that we're going to ask you to not tell people to. I mean, there may be some things that come up confidential in those committees that may not be prime for public consumption. If we're going to work through a package deal with somebody, we don't necessarily want everybody going to tell, hey, I heard that so-and-so is going to come do this. That's going to hurt our ideas and our perspectives and our opportunities. So just so people are aware, there may be something that comes up like that. But I don't think we're going to widely distribute any information that shouldn't be widely consumed.
Something that she brought up over there about that $600 a week. There are people out there that are making more money right now by taking that 600 plus the unemployment that they were able to get. We're going to bring a lot of people back into the workforce at the end of July if that drops and they have to go back to work. Now, there's the government again, there's politics, but who knows? I mean, personally, I hope they don't bring it back so we get these people back to work.
Professionally, I can tell you that there's probably not a good chance it's going to happen. I mean, personally, I'm torn because this is the prime time that it would impact my community the most to have it available, as opposed to March, where we didn't really necessarily need to use it. I think we really need it in July and August. I mean, that's the prime time that people are going to be dealing with this impact if we don't do something. You've got to imagine what's going to happen at the end of July. That's a nightmare scenario. I mean, I've lived in Wisconsin my whole life. My dad worked at Freeway in the 1980s, right? So Freeway went on strike in the 1989 year, and the company said, forget you, we're leaving, we're going to Alabama. My family made the choice to stay here. We stayed. Consewell, Freeway, you know, obviously consolidated at the time. Sora. I mean, by the time I was 13, there were 6,000 jobs less than there were when I was 6. And you saw, if you've been from Wisconsin Rapids and you were around during the late 80s, early 90s, you saw what happened. This community changed, flipped on a dime. Main Street left. Malls were empty. Streets went into disrepair because budgets were screwed up beyond belief. School enrollment dropped 40% in those 10 years. Property tax impact, municipal services impact. I mean,
I would love if Congress would say, keep the $600 a week for another 2 months. I mean, it's something we gotta deal with, and
Hey,
the
this-
outside politics of it, that's just something that people are gonna need. So my goal here, Senator Keston's goal here, Representative Shaken's goal here, Representative Vandermeer's goal here, I want people to be able to have what they need. I think the first need is their job. I think their second need is assistance. We need job first. Everything that
Representative Krug.
appreciate it. I don't think you have any other
Hey, this
comments. Destin, do you have anything else, or?
No, I just want to, again, echo and reiterate everyone's participation. Again, obviously, when this news broke, it sent shockwaves through the area, but I'm confident that we can work through this. And while there may be storm clouds on the horizon, I'm confident that we'll get to clearer waters in the near future by working together. So thank you. I look forward to participating, and thanks for everyone for being here today.
And with that, we're at an end. So look for your emails about your committees meeting next week, and we'll go from there.
Chat.
Oh, sorry.
Could I just tell the folks on the video call that we see the comments in the chat section about some of you volunteering for task forces, and we will make sure that those names get to the appropriate coordinator. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, everybody.
You watching these?
Perfect. The one thing I heard, it kind of set us up. People talking about. Because there's a perfect job for somebody. Pushing the word out beyond. Even your district.
I don't know what the representative.
The hand means that they had a question.
Okay, yeah, we missed. Yeah. I don't know, given his